So you were at the combine where I'm sure you were having a lot of these conversations.
Yep.
Give me your most impressive prospect from the combine.
Mm. So I did not spend a lot of time at the podiums where the players were speaking to the media. So I'll give my evaluation just from the perspective of what he did on the field,
Yep.
and it's polarizing. It's probably Shamar Stewart or Matthew Golden from two separate Texas schools, Texas A&M for Shamar Stewart and Matthew Golden at Texas. And I'll lean towards Golden for this reason: is I prefer when the combine looks like the tape and the tape looks like the combine as opposed to the combine not perfectly aligning with the tape. So Shamar Stewart, I've used this phrase 50 times, might as well make it 51 times, is the most fascinating prospect in the draft. He's 6'5". He dropped from 280 pounds to 264 pounds from the Senior Bowl to the combine, which is like a month apart. So he may have been like in combine training mode, but still at 264 pounds, he ran a 4.6040. He had one of the best vertical jumps of any defensive player at like 40 or 41 inches. His broad jump was 11 feet. The guy, if you saw him, is one of the most impressive looking humans that you will see. He had 4.5 sacks in his career, though. 4.5, 1.5 in each of his 3 seasons at A&M. So you're going to pay the guy to be a pass rusher, and he had just 1.5 sacks each of his 3 college seasons. He's a really, really talented player and a really solid kid, too. This is not a kid who just didn't produce because he wasn't engaged. It was just couldn't quite finish the job on these sacks. I think he's going to end up going as high as like pick 7, 8, 10. I have him a little bit lower in the rankings because I'm just a bit more risk averse pulling, that would be a big bet on a guy who had such a modest college career. Matthew Golden from Texas at 191 pounds ran a 4.2940. And this kid can scoot. He had a really good season. He had just 1 year at Texas. He was previously at Houston, but he had a great finish to the year. In 2 of the final 4 games Texas played, he had 149 or more receiving yards. I wish he had gotten to 150 because 149 just sounds a little bit awkward. That being said, you guys get the point. He was big when it mattered most for Texas, and he can fly. Like, that is clear on tape. He was the second fastest player in Indianapolis behind only Max Harrison, a guy who I've loved throughout the process from Kentucky at 4.28. That being said, Golden, a guy who grew on me throughout the year because his play improved throughout the year, should be viewed, at least in my estimation, as a first round lock.
Don't we have enough evidence at this point of guys who are physical freaks and didn't perform in college not being the best reaches
Mhm.
for the NFL draft?
Yeah. Yes. That being said, there are like things that are tantalizing in life that we consistently go back to all the time, right? It's just hard not to, or do you prefer fashion over function when it comes to your car or, things like that, right? Or like people will sacrifice warmth or comfort with their clothing to look a little bit cooler, it's like, it's just hard not to, So, I think probably the truth is that Shamar Stewart, he's going to be one of those guys that a GM either gets the feather in the cap or perhaps the walking papers from a few years from now, right? You either sit there and you look like a
Yeah.
genius because you were audacious enough to take a kid whose skills were so enticing. Or, hey, the guy ends up in 3 years with just 4.5 sacks at the NFL level. And that's just not good enough from a first round pick who was paid to rush the passer.
It's like
Feels
that
like
James Harris quote, Chad. I'm not a model. That's why I wasn't invited to the combine. I'm a football player. And
There you
that's
go.
the issue, right? There's a couple of guys, they look the part. Are they a football player? So,
Yeah.
I mean, off that topic, I've heard Quentin Ewers, the guy who hurt his draft prospect at the combine. Are there anyone that jumps out to you that really hurt their draft stock from the combine? Because we know that, guys are sitting out the combine nowadays because of this fear, this exact fear of hurting their own draft stock.
Yeah, I'll give you a few guys that performed or didn't perform in the way in which I think it could have helped them or hurt them or helped them by doing the opposite here. I love Tyler Booker. He's a really good player from Alabama. I think he still goes in the first round, but he ended up doing all the testing after measuring at like 6'5", 325 pounds. He's a big human. He's a Connecticut kid, by the way, as well. I think he's New Haven. But this guy is hard to miss. And he had a great college career at Alabama. I mean, you hear, I mean, they love him. Nick Saban, who will be on the broadcast, I'm sure will have glowing things to say about Booker. Athletic testing, though, just wasn't great. And there are teams that are just a little bit scared on guards who aren't that explosive. He ran a 5.39 40. Doesn't matter how fast you are as a guard. No, but, it also suggests that your foot quickness is not in line with where some of these defensive tackles are. I still think he goes in the first round, but I moved him down from like maybe a guy that could go as high as like 13, 14 to maybe a guy that ends up going like 20, 21. His teammate Jalen Milroe, I think, actually would have benefited from doing some stuff at the combine. The throwing is always going to be a hot topic, but don't you guys think, and I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth, so if you disagree vehemently, let me know. But if Jalen Milroe had gone to the combine and run a 4.35 40, I think it would have helped him a lot because it would have been a reminder to people that for the deficiency he does have right now as a pocket and rhythm passer, he's one of the most explosive players in the NFL in the draft. He just is. Like I'd be if I'm taking Jalen Milroe. And I haven't finished. I'm working on my top 100 right now. It's not finished. It won't be for some time. There's a lot of work to be done there. But like you could tell me Jalen deserves to be 40th. You could also say he might be closer to 75th. He's such a tantalizing guy. I think if he had run, it really would have helped remind us of why he is so intriguing. And just generally speaking, like running backs and wide receivers that don't run great are gonna come out of the combine, feel a little bit different. Caleb Johnson from Iowa is a really great player who's just like a perfect fit for a zone scheme. He just wants to put one foot in the ground and he's got great vision, just hit the hole and go. Run a 4.57, not a great number for him. So running backs and wide receivers that miss that speed mark are always going to be impacted in a negative way, unfortunately. You just don't see many 4.5 or faster, 4.5 or slower wide receivers go in round one. If you're closer to 4.6 than 4.5, it might mean that Caleb Johnson goes 60th as opposed to, I thought, maybe 35th at one point during the process.
I feel like everybody would be better off. Maybe you disagree with this.
Okay.
Everyone would be better off if nobody worked out at the combine and you just used film that you had from the players on the field.
Yeah.
And what you did at the combine, you did your interviews. You got to meet with the players one-on-one. You got to know them personally. You got to get a sense of who they are. You got to see how they perform in front of the media. I think the combine creates such recency bias that it screws up the metrics and the measurements and the feelings for all the people who have been doing the work all season long and changes the calculus on this stuff. I think it's a terrible way to try to manage the draft because you go into it thinking, oh my God, I just saw a superhero. Jalen Milroe, judge him on what you saw. We've got so much film on Jalen Milroe. If you need the combine and Jalen Milroe to run a 4.35 40 to decide, oh my God, we have to get this guy. And then you get him into camp and realize, wait a second, he's not an accurate passer. He's just a really dynamic athlete. Shame on you. Not you, Field, but on the scouts.
So I'll take it one step further. We're in the same vicinity here, but a little bit different. I've wondered why we don't have the draft 5 days after the national championship game, right? And you think, I wonder if and I hope this does not come across as piling on because I was incredibly optimistic, like in a detrimental manner on Anthony Richardson for fantasy football purposes last year. Does that guy go fourth overall if if the draft is done on January 20th as opposed to April 20th? You have 3 months to think and overthink stuff,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, yeah, I mean, it is impressive that some of these guys, Shamar Stewart, Anthony Richardson, can run as fast as they can at that size. But if every coach and GM says the starting point of the evaluation is the tape, maybe it'll be different. And is it a shorter window to evaluate? I mean, yes, for the first time, but it won't be for every year after that, right? It just means that your scouts start up on the 2026 draft on January 30th of 2025 as opposed to April 30th of 2025. So it is an interesting debate, and I do wonder about how the combine will look in future years because of the number of players that are opting out. And I mean opting out of the testing, of course, because they all still showed up. But last year, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. showed up, did interviews, measured, I think just left. Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors didn't even take measurements, and those guys had two of the greatest rookie seasons we've ever seen. So it's sort of like if those guys are going to be completely unbothered by their participation or lack thereof at the combine, what is the point of it? It's a fascinating debate. I like the combine still because of, the intel gathering, and I do enjoy seeing some of these kids who are more like day three players who can reaffirm or boost their stock. That being said, it's a very different event when you're sitting there and each position group that comes by, you're like, okay, so my top wide receiver, no sign of him. Top quarterbacks, no sign of them. It just hits a little bit differently. There's no two ways around it.
Yeah,
Look,
when I talk to coaches, Chad, the combine, honestly, it's mental warfare. It's not really about on the field. It's about making these kids uncomfortable, asking them crazy questions, honestly talking shit to them. Like a lot of these drills you see on TV, sometimes they're at 10 o'clock at night. Like it's just messing with these kids' heads. And it always cracks me up, but it's the great part of that movie Draft Day. Did they go to the kid's birthday party? Like that's what this 3 months is about. All the stupid shit we don't even think about. It's them trying to figure out who this person is as a man, how are they mentally, and what will they be coming out of it. So I'm with you, Chad. I get like the combine can be a little bit much at times, but overall, I love the idea of it. Of they're just trying to poke and prong these guys and really figure stuff out, what kind of man they are, because it is so mental. And a guy we heard a ton about, Chad, that might have not done the best at the combine is Sanders, right? I mean, this is a quarterback position. He's polarizing a lot of front offices. What's your view on that, Fields? Like, what are you hearing about him right now? Where I'm of the mindset of teams that love him are going to absolutely talk shit about him and bash him to the media right now, because that is the game of the draft, right? They're going to say they didn't like the way he spoke, that he's arrogant, that he's too cocky. They probably love that behind closed doors. They're just like thinking,
of course,
I don't be trading up to number 1 or number 2 to get this kid. So what are you hearing about him right now?
Yeah, I take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt. What's reported, and I'm not talking about the people. I'm just talking about like the people that are reporting. I'm just saying like the content, because of what you're describing, Simon, is that like there might be some motivation, right? There might be motivation to get this guy to fall, because it's a completely unpredictable event, and you're at the mercy of others if you want to shift your draft order, right? If you want to go from 6 to 4 and you're the Raiders, you got to convince the Patriots to do a trade. You can't just say, "Hey, we'll flip flop," right? So I have not had a conversation with somebody who has spent time with Shador and explicitly has said to me something that has negatively impacted my evaluation of him. I like Shador as a player. I'm not as bullish on either of the quarterbacks at the top as I was the first 3 last year, which I think is in line with where most people wind up. And that has nothing to do with them as humans. It's just from a football talent evaluation standpoint. So Cam Ward, my top 32 will drop tomorrow on ESPN, sometime soon. If not tomorrow, it's very soon. And Cam Ward is, I'm sorry, I should know this better, 6 or 7, and Shador is 17th. So, and last year, I mean, those guys at the top, from the day the draft order was set, I said, let's just move on to pick 4, because in some order it's going to be Caleb, Jaden, Drake. You decide which order it actually is. More of the question was, would it be Jaden or Drake at pick number 2? So anyways, I think those guys both go. I think Cam Ward's going first overall. I just think that's where we've landed. I don't know to who, but it's to somebody. And the Titans have found themselves in a pretty good position, actually. Because I do believe, and again, there's no such thing as a unanimous sentiment in the NFL, but I spoke to significantly more people that if they had the option to choose between Cam Ward or Shador Sanders, would prefer Ward to Sanders while still liking Sanders. It's not like, hey, I like Cam and Shador does nothing for me. It's just, if you're giving me the option, one or the other, it's a binary decision here. I'm taking Cam Ward. And I also think that because teams with their quarterback preferences, in some cases, it is like you like one guy and you don't like the other. It's like house hunting, right? You might see 2 homes for similar value. You really like one, but the other lacks 3 features that you really feel are musts, and you're not going to have any interest in it. So I think the Titans, whether they want to take Cam Ward or whether they find a team that prefers Cam Ward enough that they would move ahead of Cleveland, who of course has number 2, they can get a pretty decent trade package here. But it wouldn't surprise me if the first 3 picks in the draft are 2 quarterbacks and then one of Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, which means despite the Patriots winning in week 18 and pushing them down to 1-4, they may well end up with one of, to me, the two best players in the draft. I still view Abdul Carter, well, Travis Hunter first, and then Abdul Carter second as the two best players in this class.